Isn't that sweet? That amoeba's going to give that paramecium a big hug. Oh, wait a minute. No! Da 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 do 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 da 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 do do. All right. Da 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 do do do. Hey now. Da 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 do do. Mr. Kovacs class. It's really fun. It's Mr. Kovacs class. You might learn a ton. It's Mr. Kovacs class. It's interesting too. It's Mr. Kovacs class. And he's super cool. It's Mr. Kovacs class. All right, friends. Yesterday we met the 3 Hall of Famers. You remember Amy the amoeba. Amy the amoeba. She has no definite shape. She oozes with pseudopods. That's what we call these little things, pseudopods. She sticks out her cell membrane and her cytoplasm streams in behind it. And if you look closely right here, you can see this circular round nugget of a nucleus. Amy, the amoeba. Then we met Perry, the paramecium. Like Amy, he's 1 cell big. Paramecium. Like Amy, he's kind of see-through, and he's got an outer boundary of a membrane. And he's got cytoplasm on the inside. He even has a nucleus. But he's different. He has a definite shape. And if you look closely, he's got these little teeny tiny hairs all over his body we call cilia. Cilia. This is Perry the paramecium, also a member of the Unicellular Hall of Fame. And of course, our third member of the Hall of Fame was Eugene the Euglena. Like Perry and like Amy, he's kind of see-through. Like Perry, he's got a kind of a definite shape, but different than both of them, he's green. He's got all these little organelles we call chloroplasts floating inside of his body. He can take what, well look, he doesn't have a nucleus. But he's got chloroplasts. He can take water, air, and sunlight and make glucose. Unlike the other two, he moves differently as well. Instead of having lots of little hairs all over his body, he's got one long whip-like tail called a flagellum. Flagellum. This is Eugene the Euglena. So they have lots of things in common. We call the 3 members of the Hall of Fame, the Unicellular Hall of Fame, eukaryotic, because they have their nucleus, they have all their genetic material stored in a nucleus. And then their cytoplasm has other, we call them organelles, little bits and bodies inside. Not every living thing is eukaryotic. There are some organisms that do not have nucleuses. Their DNA just floats around on the inside of their cytoplasm. We call those guys prokaryotic. Let's see, an example of something prokaryotic? Staph. Yeah, this is a staph infection. This is actually an infection with something called MRSA, M-R-S-A. MRSA is a bacterium. It's 1 cell big, but it does not have a nucleus. It is what we call a prokaryotic bacteria. Its DNA is kind of spread out on the inside. It has a membrane, but then on the outside of the membrane, it's got layers of peptides and proteins, which allow it to survive all kinds of environments. In fact, look, it's got a protein coat made of keratin on the outside. This is a prokaryotic bacterium. Bacteria all come in different kinds, but they're basically 3 different shapes. So the round ones, the cocci, they're the kind of rod-like ones, the bacilli, and there's the spiral-shaped ones, the spirille. Let's see, like MRSA is round, E. coli is rod-shaped, and like Lyme disease bacteria is spiral. But they're all the same. They have no nucleus. What else is the same? They're small, smaller than regular cells. Okay? Here's a red blood cell, right? I mean, they're small compared to the thickness of a human hair. They're super small. But they're a eukaryotic cell. E. coli, a bacterial cell, look how much smaller it is. Smaller it is. It's at least 10 times smaller. Of course, bacteria are small, but they're not as small as viruses, which are even smaller. We're going to talk about viruses later, but like coronavirus, incredibly small. Smaller than bacteria, which is smaller than a blood cell, which is way smaller than even a width of a human hair. Teeny tiny, teeny tiny. Okay, so we got two different types of cells. That's our target today. There are the eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells. I mean, they have a cell membrane and cytoplasm, and inside the cytoplasm is a nucleus that has all of the DNA. There are other organelles as well. Prokaryotic, like bacteria, they have a cell membrane, but they also have an outer cell wall. But inside their cytoplasm, they do not have a nucleus. Their DNA just floats around freely. Prokaryotic. Eukaryotic? Yes, nucleus. Prokaryotic? Pro, no, nucleus. Eu, yes. Pro, no. Yes, nucleus. No, nucleus. Nucleus, yes. Nucleus, no. Yes, no. Is there a nucleus? Yes. Is there a nucleus? No. Is there a nucleus? No. Nucleus? No. Nucleus? Yes. All right. So prokaryotic cells, no nucleus. DNA is on the inside. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and have other organelles floating around. This is kind of misleading, this picture, because it makes them look like they're the same size. In real life, prokaryotic cells are all much, much, much smaller. In fact, the prokaryotic cell is about the same size as a mitochondrion that you might have inside a eukaryotic cell. Now, what's interesting, if you look at the fossil record, the Earth has been around for about 4.5 billion years. The first life arose about 3.8 billion years ago, and those were prokaryotic bacteria. And then for 2 billion years, that's 2,000 million years, 2 billion, billion years, 2,000 million years, there was no other kind of living things than bacteria. And then about 1.5 billion years ago, some cells became eukaryotic. They became much bigger, and they decided to put their DNA into nucleuses. And then about 500 million years ago, some decided to get together and make larger organisms. So for most of the history of life on Earth, everything that's alive has only been one cell big. That's pretty wild. So let's see. Oh, look, another Venn diagram. What do they have in common? They have DNA, they have cytoplasm, and they have membranes. But the difference is, of course, eukaryotic have them in a nucleus. Prokaryotic are no nucleus. Eukaryotic cells are much bigger. Prokaryotic cells are small. It's almost like eukaryotic cells are more organized. Prokaryotic cells are pretty simple. But simple doesn't make them less worthy. They've been around for 3.8 billion years. All right. I thought this was pretty interesting. If you remember Dr. Phil's show, Symbiosis, you and I have symbiotic, we have about 4 pounds of bacteria that live in our guts that are different species but live inside of our bodies. And they help us in our, especially our large intestine, they help us take some of the food that we did not digest and squeeze some nutrients out of it, like vitamins and minerals. Pretty nice, huh? Symbiosis, mutualism. Of course, there are lots of harmful critters out there, harmful bacteria like strep, like staph infections, like, I don't know, here's a staph would be here. If you've ever had a bacterial infection like meningitis or, there are lots of terrible bacterial infections, MRSA, strep throat, bacteria. The only thing good about bacteria compared to some viruses is that bacteria, since they are alive, you can kill them with an antibiotic. Not true for viruses. Anyway, the theme of today is prokaryotic versus eukaryotic. Know the difference, love the difference. That is all.